Between July 1920 and July 1922, 453 people were killed in Belfast, nearly two-thirds of them Catholic. Hundreds of Catholic families fled their homes. Over 10,000 Catholics lost their jobs, and 500 Catholic businesses were wrecked. It was a pogrom. Clashes had occurred on the same streets, along the same divide between Catholic and Protestant as in the 19th century, and would again later in the 20th century.
Undoubtedly, there were attacks from the Catholic side directed towards the Protestant. But I think that the main reason for the Protestant attacks in the Catholic ghettos was simply because of the fact that most Catholics were seen to be people who gave their allegiance to the Parliament of Southern Ireland and who did not give their allegiance to the new state of Northern Ireland. As well as that, we still had the IRA in existence. Indeed, the IRA at that time were still in control of many of the border areas. And therefore the Protestants felt and believed that the best way to deal with the situation was to go into the ghetto areas and root them out.
It was a pogrom which was endorsed by the leaders of the Unionist Party who were to become the government of the new state, which was winked at by the police force, if not participated in by sections of what was to be the new police force, the Special Constabulary. They were known to be involved in reprisal killings and so on. And they then, in turn, both became the reserve force of the government in successive years, but they also formed most of the backbone of the full-time police force.
From the beginning, the police force in Northern Ireland was armed and predominantly Protestant. To back them up, a special constabulary was formed, the B Special. By 1922, nearly 1 in 5 of the adult male Protestant population was in the B Specials and maintaining order. In other words, he could do anything at all in the name of law and order, be it banning political parties and newspapers, prescribing processions and demonstrations, destroying property, arresting without warrant, or imprisoning without trial.
The reason why we had this repressive legislation, which was seen to be against the minority, and undoubtedly that's where it was directed, was against the minority, was quite simply because of the fact that the minority could not be trusted. This, in the minds of the Unionists, was the basic problem. That the Catholic population were people who gave their allegiance to a foreign parliament, who were a threat to the state of Northern Ireland, and therefore the Unionist politicians and the Unionist Parliament felt that they had to have powers and machinery to destroy any threat to the state.
The effect in the minority community was to create a terrible feeling of defeatism, that it was impossible to do anything by political means against the state, that every avenue of change was closed because it could be made illegal under the Special Powers Act. And that led in the majority of the population to a heavy feeling of defeatism. In a minority, it turned them towards violence as the only possible road. If all constitutional activity was illegal, well, there was no resort left but violence.
Omagh, September 1924. In a nationalist area, Protestant Unionists demonstrated their loyalty to the United Kingdom, but their government had already acted against the rebel councils. Some were suspended, proportional representation was, and the electoral arrangements juggled, so that where there were Catholic majorities, Protestant councils would be returned. Of the 25 nationalist councils of 1921, only 2 remained by 1925. The Protestant state was secure. Its loyalty is clear. Lord Craigavon, Prime Minister of Northern Ireland for 20 years.
We are part of Great Britain. I think I am right in saying we are the most loyal part of Great Britain. And all Ulster men rejoice in the close relationship between the mother country and ourselves.
Throughout the 20s, political life in Ulster was uneventful. Politics were parochial and part-time. As the well-to-do enjoyed themselves on the Antrim coast, it could well have been Eastbourne. But in the slums of Belfast, for both Catholic and Protestant, life grew harder. world recession of the 30s hit the Belfast working class particularly badly.
The conditions were appalling. Women working from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, and babies born at 8 o'clock, and they were back in the job, and between 30 and 40 hours, not able to stand on their feet.
I saw children with rickets, deformed children. I subsequently discovered that they were suffering from rickets, malnutrition. And you could hear from many of the little kitchen houses the boasts and the raucous cough of the consumptive.
You see, there was a glut of workers. It's just like having too many strawberries or too many tomatoes. You have a glut of those, you get them cheap. And there was a glut of workers, human beings, and we were plentiful and we were cheap. It was a difficult time to live in.
Tuberculosis was rife in the linen mills of Belfast. A survey revealed that a third of the working class population had too little to maintain their health and ability to work. In housing, health and sanitation, there had been no progress. Belfast's great industry, shipbuilding, was running down. In 1931, Harland and Wolff launched its last ship for 2 years. In 1934, Workman Clark's closed down permanently. 1 man in 4 was out of work. Those who'd been out of work for a long time could not claim unemployment benefits. They were forced back on the Victorian Poor Law. A family with 2 children got 16 shillings a week. At today's price is about £14. 4% of the working population were dependent on the Poor Law.
So this produced a real indignant atmosphere among workers. And we had these meetings and eventually hunger marches. We had them coming from Derry, and I saw one of these hunger marches arriving in North Street one night, and they were like scarecrows, you know. It was really a terrible situation.
Some of them were on their bare feet. Some of them just had a piece of cloth rolled around their feet. And blisters, poverty. I'm sure the good Lord had a sore heart when he looked down and saw how we were being treated. But it was a step in the right direction. The Falls and the Shankill united.
We had the drafting into the city of all of the police in Northern Ireland, and we had the armoured cars on the streets, and we had... It was just like an armed camp, you know, the whole of the city. And then martial law was declared, where 3 people were gathered together, they could be arrested. And on October 11th, the people decided to defy this, and rioting broke out.
The riots of 1932, directed against the Poor Law Guardians, brought movie-tone cameras from England.
Anticipating that there might be an attempt to defy the proclamation, reinforcements of police were drafted in from outlying districts to prevent any large assembly of demonstrators approaching the city buildings where the Guardians were in session. Despite the emergency measures, however, several processions formed, and the police found themselves forced to use first their batons and finally their firearms to repel the rioters who were using any missile which came to hand.